Is everyone just really quiet this morning?
Very quiet.
Good morning.
Morning,
Good
y'all.
morning.
Or
wondering if,
afternoon, as it may be.
Good point. Wondering, does anyone know if Stephen won't be joining to lead today, and if we should maybe find somebody else who wants to?
No, I'll drive. Just let me get logged in here. I got a new computer, so everything's
Hey, exciting.
behind.
Perfect.
Yeah. Mostly it just means that nothing is saved.
Good to see you, Jeremy, or at least hear from you. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Just a sec. I might need to leave and come back. Unless, Laura, I see you here. Do you happen to have any convenient?
I do have it convenient, if that is more convenient.
It might be more convenient while I continue to get this computer set up.
Okay. One moment. That's this button. Hold on. It's only medium convenient, but we're halfway there.
Can't even find the claim host button anymore. I don't know what happened.
Oh, I got logged out too. Okay. I don't think I can help you the way that I want to. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay, yeah.
That'll be easier.
Sorry. So complex. Locked down so tight.
All right. Hello.
Howdy.
We now should have screen sharing enabled.
Okay, I can insist on the screen sharing assist if that helps.
That would also help, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura, for saving the day.
Couldn't save the first half, sorry.
Okay. All right, so starting with Scrub. So we have a proposal to add a CRD version label.
Let's see.
It's me who added that, but we can discuss about it. But I think
All right.
Stephen would be the one who would have like the most important input, I guess, because, well, I mean, assuming we want to do that, the question is, do we want to follow the release note, or is it a version that live on its own, not entirely related to the latest tag or something like that?
Sorry, what was that?
What was the last part of what you said, Arthur?
Like, does this version live on its own? Like, it could be 0.1 while the latest tag is 0.2, or is it something that we do before the release? And if we do that, basically each time we want to do a meaningful change in MCS API, we would have to release, so meaning release more frequently.
Sure.
So yeah, I think like more frequent releases is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think we necessarily have to do a release every time we make a change, but typically like if we get into the cadence of doing one release a year even would be an improvement over the current cadence. But yeah, I think typically what you want to do is like when you're prepping for a new release, do this change and then cut the release. So I'm sure that we're a little rusty on release machinery, but
Yeah.
as we start looking at like potentially cutting the release, making sure that this is like updating this label in the CRDs is one of the steps that we'll do. I think my only question is whether we want to actually match the specific label that Gateway API is already using for this exact same feature, or if it's worth having something different. My preference would just be to lean towards what they do already. Just for
I think they
consistency.
use an annotation though, but I would be happy with the label annotation if this shipped. To be honest.
Yeah. Whatever they're doing currently, I think that we can almost copy, and I think
Yeah.
this is a good improvement.
But
I like not reinventing the wheel. If there's a
just the Gateway API is talking about the bundle. I don't think it's really a bundle that we are doing here, but yeah.
Oh, bundle is yeah. So gateways, the word bundle is basically just to disambiguate it from the like Kubernetes version. So like the like V1 Alpha 1, V1 Alpha 2 or whatever, and be like, this is reflecting the GitHub release version. And just bundle is what they call that version.
Well, I mean, if you want to name it bundle version, I'm happy to, but
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, it's kind of weird for MCS API to me, but well, it's fine too.
Yeah, it makes sense that we don't have a existing usage of the term bundle. Yeah, the intent is just to disambiguate from the Kubernetes API version.
Arthur, was your
Yeah.
issue that you observed that Gateway API bundle semantically seems to be referring to more information than what you are trying to refer to in this PR?
Yeah.
I felt like that was something you were trying to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then I guess I don't have enough understanding of bundle, but you said something, Arthur, about how in your observation bundle means something about the vendor.
Oh, no. I was more referring to like CRD and Gateway API are not all required. They are optional. There is also channels. So it's
Okay.
whole another world.
Okay, yeah,
basically.
I see. All right. It is not required by vendors to be implemented. So that's a difference. Okay.
And also this is proven, but not in the existing thing that I'm in my PR is like proven by Cilium, not by a Kubernetes SIG or anything, but this is what we use for CRD basically with the label and almost this label schema.
You're saying this proposal is based on how Cilium does it today, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if we
For
were looking
its
for
own
prior
CRD.
art, we have two prior arts in the convo right now.
Yes.
I've seen enough prior art over in Gateway API implementations doing something functionally very similar to be confident that like this is worth doing. And yeah, let's sort out the bundle issue naming on the issue. I think that's somewhat separate from the like experimental channel optional thing like that. But yeah, we can figure out what to actually call it.
Sure. I'm happy to call it
Cool.
anything.
Yeah.
As long as it's cheap.
Yep. I think this is good though. It's close.
Okay. Any other comments that hasn't that people on the call have about this? And I guess about like the release. I don't know if we got into a super confident conversation about what our release rename
Maybe
timing or infrastructure is, but I'm also not sure that that blocks this.
No,
maybe let's just
it's
talk about it with Steven when he's back.
Okay.
Because it's the one that did the last release, and I think the most active approver in this repo.
Yeah.
So I guess it probably would be his work. So
Okay. Yeah, I
maybe let's
understand.
not.
I think he's back. Is it next week, Laura?
No, he's gone for
Oh.
August, my people.
Oh.
It's over.
yeah,
it's
Europeans in August are just gone for
This European definitely is following the stereotype gladly. So, no.
It's fine. We can assume that it's September.
Okay. All right. I think that's everything we felt about that. Okay. Lost my tab. Here we go. This is next update. Cat 43222 camera cluster profiles here being namespaced.
Yeah, I can talk about this real quick. It's super short. I was just reading through the
Okay.
CAP, and this is for the kind of not recommended path of using a secret for the credentials rather than using the new credential provider thing. Anyway, there's a label in there for the cluster profile name, but there's no way to actually say the namespace. So I was just
I see.
fixing that quickly.
That's usually because the namespace would be in the same. It would be the same namespace as the secret.
Like in the metadata dot namespace.
But it says that the secret is the namespace of the consumer, whereas the cluster profile can't be in the namespace of the consumer because it's global. The secret is per consumer, and
I
it
see.
refers back to the parent cluster profile.
I see.
Right.
Okay, not really in here, but yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for bringing it up. Sounds like looks like it needs LGTM. So yeah, I'll take a more serious look after this and make sure I give it a good read, but seems fine.
Thanks. And there was also in the credential provider CAP, there was a kind of sketch of a credential provider that would read a secret, which might be better than having this kind of like not recommended secret thing in the cluster profile itself, but that can be a separate discussion just if we wanted to standardize on always using the credential provider mechanism.
Okay. Okay, cool. Any other pressing scrub content people want to lift? Or shall we move on to the topics now? Near. Okay. I feel like maybe Arthur wanted to talk about this, but the next topic is about changing the service import API. Like close.
Yeah, I forgot to add my
some
name.
tabs.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's first to your opinion because I think Jeremy, you had like Well, you had concern about changing the condition, so maybe you have also strong concern here to not change anything, for instance. And yeah, I don't know. For me, it's either, well, from the CM ways, either is fine. We would just probably prefer like the do nothing aspect, so not change anything, or maybe move the IP to status. But as long as it moves and we can ship to view of beta 1, I will probably do something and do the change, not hard block.
Yeah, let me recontextualize this a little bit too. So
yeah, sorry.
Arthur was referring to, it was this one, right?
No, it's the service export, sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. I'm trying to.
I think I said service import also.
That's okay. This one.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I think looking at this pull request will help as well. Okay, so last time, I guess, we were talking about changing service import conditions. And there's some triage notes down here that I hope I wrote. I didn't. That's fun. That basically we talked about how deprecating existing conditions, which is part of this proposal here, was harder to accept than just adding new ones. And there was just difference on the spectrum of people who were in attendance on whether something like MCS, despite like what its maturity status is, realistically what we can change as a combination of like how many implementations there are, how mature that they are, what the type of like enterprise customer is that is using them, et cetera, et cetera. And while we came to I would say, decision I felt about this one, which was that we could split the concerns about just pure adding things and adding versus and deprecating things. There was a thought that this philosophical conversation had an application to this bigger conversation about reorganizing the service import, which has been in discussion in the SIG for like almost 2 years, maybe at least like a year, I think, and maybe coming up on its first year anniversary. So yeah, just to recontextualize that for everybody. So yeah, and then throughout the entire like year-long process of discussing the change to service import, there's itself been different variations of like, do we just want to move one field? Do we want to move all the fields? Do we just want to do nothing? Many of the supporting like documents related to this, some of which are linked here too from the ceiling point of view that Arthur put together, or some of the conversation even earlier that Mike put together, like a lot of it is about like semantic and trying to follow like the API not really readability, but I guess like, and not really style guide, but I don't know, what is it, conventions?
Yeah, it's the API conventions doc that
yeah.
SIG architecture owns.
Right, which is difficult to some degree for us to apply because service import and service export by definition are like split brain like objects that are like across clusters. So it breaks some of at least the architectural thoughts that went into those documents, but it is still best effort to try and fit both that viewpoint that comes from that and the experience that people and implementers have lived. And now we are at a new crossroads where we're talking about, is this worth it? Before we were like, it's worth it. And now we're like triple downing on whether it's worth it. I think that's what's up.
So I see we've gotten feedback from several implementations here.
Yeah, this one.
At this point, based on the feedback, have we been able to review the feedback and have a proposed direction here? I think with the caveat that it looks like Karmada folks have not weighed in, but do we have a proposed direction here?
Just the thing is that we added like a status on service import meanwhile.
Yes.
And for instance, the kube fleet folks, I don't know, there's Ryan in the call, but they said on Stack with this new status, they would prefer just proving the IP, for instance. And they said otherwise in this issue. So I don't know if it's updated towards what implementation 1 versus what we have already done. But here it's more like what implementation are doing rather than their definitive opinion on this. So at least we know what they are doing. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to add, I think what Jing said was, and I see someone else say something. We mostly don't use this as a spec. It's more like a status. I don't know if it's spec, whatever. It's not. At least it's not really a spec. But let's see.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
is saying in this issue.
yeah.
But with the service import conditions, he said on Slack. I can find the message, but something along.
That's this conversation.
I find the link. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Option 2.
Which is move the AP to status.
Okay, so here's some person to option 2. Yeah, kind of same by preference doing that IP success, do nothing in this order, but both close to each other and merge to rate a bit more last since it's more changes make less sense for us with our 2 controllers design. Okay. That's okay. Fine. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? This is what we've been talking about for a long time. And let me see if I can also get, I don't know if history helps us here. Like, I think that we kind of just have to like decide, like, this is a triangle between like, I guess the factors are that this is a triangle between like work for implementers is bad. Changing like things on users is bad until it's good. And there's a time between that. And that could be long as far as we know.
Yeah, and even there is like, because for instance, in Cilium, we are relying on coordinates. And now it's shipped by default. Well, it's not shipped in the latest Kubernetes version with that, but we will have to play with it. So
right.
like reconcile it.
Yeah, so it's not just work for implementers, it's also work.
Coordinates, I guess.
Like SIGM, C complicated, but yeah.
Yeah.
Releases like core DNS.
Oh yeah, because actually it will also break gateway API things too. So yeah, adjacent is a good word.
So there's those things. So you have to decide it's worth it despite all of these things.
Is there any next steps that would help get us closer to a decision here? I think my big question is potential implications for Karmada. Whether they support any use case of like specifying the IPs blocked manually. Because it sounds like none of the other implementations do that.
No,
It's all
I don't think.
it's all
Yeah, I don't
created
think
by a controller.
anything. Right.
So
And
we now have APAC time SIG meetings. I think last time Kamada didn't join, but I can ping them to make sure we can bring this up just directly in that meeting. If
That would be
some of
great.
them come.
Yeah, I think that would be
I
great.
think we have it this week or next week. We should have it very close.
Yeah, maybe also Arthur, we can like start the new agenda for APAC and then make sure that this is added there with enough context, even if like you won't be there, so we can get some.
But for instance,
that'd be helpful. I think
Sorry.
Jeremy was saying, of course, since he'll be out, that APAC, he gave us the heads up that it would just be folks joining without a screen share. So making sure that the Karmada folks know to, we need an answer would be very helpful.
I can help. I normally attend. And Clay, I see you attend too.
Okay.
I don't know. We need a special permission to screen share. Is that what we need?
But just, I mean, if we go in a direction that doesn't impact too much Karmada.
Sure.
Well, if everyone wants to do something that doesn't impact too much Karmada, I guess it's fine to. Well, it's not a hard blocker, let's say. It's better to have their opinion, of course, but yeah.
Right. So I think we have like an idea of how to get that opinion, but that doesn't fully answer this question.
Yeah, like I think we still have the other factors to consider of like, is it really worth it? But understand it's like, would this actually break a feature of one implementation? I think it's just one point that helps us make that decision.
Right.
I think except for Karmada, it won't break anyone. It just may be easier or harder.
Exactly.
But just does people that wanted the merge to root as evolved when we added status condition, like people working with kubefleet, or not? Maybe we can rule something out or not.
I mean, the main motivation for merge to root in the first place was that it just makes it easier to write controllers when this is an implementation detail, right? So you don't have to do the two separate updates for the spec and the status of resource.
And it also prevents issues with like users thinking they can change fields that they really shouldn't be changing.
Right. Like there's some signaling there, although frankly, you can still like if it's flattened, you can still go edit it. Like so it's convention, it's signaling. If there's good reason to keep them separate and have the sub resource, then that would say that this is probably definitely not worth it. I think in general it's churn, to the spirit of avoiding the big changes, like we don't want to change things unless there's a good reason. The thinking was that flattening would be a good reason because it just makes future controller development much easier. Maybe that's not actually worth it in practice, in which case do nothing and finally GA this thing is appealing.
But do you still have this opinion that merging to root is good, since there is like a status now in service import and technically it's not guideline compliant to put a status in the spec, I guess? Well,
yeah, exactly. Now that there's a status, it's kind of evolved in a way where maybe that doesn't make sense. Spec doesn't feel semantically correct, but it's kind of still kind of maps the convention.
Okay. So we cannot eliminate one, basically, according to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think my bias is to do nothing in the situation if that's not clear. And then move the IPs to status was like the original like pain point I felt that was really brought up. But yeah, I mean, this conversation has evolved over the long time for a lot of like different semantic cases. I think what I've observed the most is that like we don't all agree on those semantics clearly, and so I think any of these is gonna like cause a problem to somebody because the guidance is not clearly applicable. So because of that, then it becomes a matter of like how much value it gives to the implementation details and how hard it is to change it. And I think it's harder to change it than it is the benefit to the implementation details, personally.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
But at the same time, we all agree that IP should not be managed manually. So it makes sense in the status, well, or to the root.
Yeah,
We
but I
also
also believe
potentially,
that's too small of a edge case problem, and that it can be like
Okay.
protected more by documentation with less like pain here, in my opinion.
we could
Okay.
also potentially add IPs to status and have that as the like canonical implementation. And maybe that is an easier change for some of the implementations that would prefer to not drop a field.
Well,
But
I don't think it's so much about dropping a field. It's that like with the spec, like with the current setup, you can
Mhm.
make it all functional with just
Mhm.
writing the spec. Like you can do a single write. If we move a critical field like IPs to status, or we make the canonical version status, then you
Mhm.
have to write spec and status, then it becomes a 2 write.
And
Okay.
I guess if we were to do that, it would be like we wanted to do, like, because we would move the IP to status and probably deprecate the old field and drop it at some point, or
Yeah.
never. But yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of echoing Laura, like we do that if there's a real clear benefit, but if there's not a clear benefit, then status quo seems okay.
Is that 2 write constraint or performance issue? Is that able to be linked anywhere? Is it like written up on the cube doc somewhere? We can like add in this comment.
I don't know where it's written down.
This is about minimizing the rates, right?
Yeah, and it's not. I don't look at it as a performance issue. It's just like it's more cumbersome
It's
to
just
implement.
less API calls.
Yeah,
But if you derive services as owner reference to the service import, you have to do this like multiple calls anyway.
if you yeah, right, but that's because your implementation requires doing multiple writes, which is fine, versus
Yeah.
because we drove you with the schema.
Yeah. It doesn't apply to everyone. Like for instance, Antria has like this derived service, but they do not have the owner reference to the service import, so they could still optimize it in a way that doesn't require to write.
Right.
Yeah, I think like similarly, this fact is not enough to make it worth it. Like it is information, and it can be a reason that like we talked about it, but I don't think in the architectures that we observe or expect that we think this is the biggest problem.
All right, well, this feels like we've captured a lot of context here. And I think we have next steps of,
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I said that so loud and strongly.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay. However, based on the one last thought is, we observe and expect this may be negligible. Okay. Comment. Okay. That was this conversation. Now to add IP families to service import, Submariner is now interested in addition to Cillian. Mike is pro with caveat. Here we go. All right, this is about define dual stack policies and fields on this cap, which is about, you can use this IP families field as a hint to influence which IP family is going to be used. And what's the latest? Is that over here?
Yeah, I added a comment this morning. Oh, not
Okay, not here. Here.
no, in the conversation part,
Sure.
not in the diff.
Okay.
Basically, like just I reread some of the service dual stack docs, and there's a couple things that I think that we need to pull through into this to like understand, is there certain behavior that we're prescribing, or like what's the implications of IP family policy that we're not and at this point planning on servicing that, but I think that we just want to understand like how that translates. And some of this I think that Arthur already covered, like expected functionality in the presentation and diagram that he gave, and it's just a matter of like, can we encode some of this in the cap here?
I'm not sure we should, because well, we would have all like kind of different expectation in terms of implementation, how we want to do that. For instance, I would like to Cilium to be restrictive, like doing an intersection. I know, well, last time I talked with Tom about it, but maybe he can talk for himself. He was thinking of a union, and about the IP family not like conditionally mutable. Implementation could, for instance, using a DRI services, could create services with preferred dual stack and like make the order change how they want be reported into the service import, if that makes sense. Like if you
I don't think we have to say that like there's one canonical way to do that. I think it's just like saying these are factors you should consider when you're building your implementation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So adding to the already consideration that I was saying, like by default services are single stack, you would need to add, oh, you cannot change the order and things like that on a regular service. Okay,
Yep.
That's reasonable and
Or
helpful.
do we just reference the service docs versus?
I already
really
did
what
that, but maybe we can do both.
I think it's
actually-
both. I think we
I guess like the real motivation here is we're just kind of following what service does, right? And we just want to make it clear that this is like, it's not new concepts you really have to understand. It's do what service does.
Yeah, the biggest difference is basically when you have clusters with different dual stack configurations in a single cluster set. So when you have like one dual stack cluster, one IPv4 and one IPv6, what happens when you export those services?
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Just it's I think what Mike said was not what you said, Jeremy. Like he was saying, oh, by the way, the service has this behavior by default, so take into account in your implementation, not follow it exactly necessarily. That makes sense.
Can you say that again?
Like currently in the cap, I'm saying, oh, by the way, by default, services are by default single stack. If you do not say explicitly, I want a dual stack, there is no way around it. So I think Mike was saying that we should add to that by saying, oh, also, by the way, you cannot change the order of the IP families in a regular service. Also, maybe take that into consideration when you implement that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's basically we have
sure.
a slightly expanded scope than the existing service docs.
Okay, yeah.
Because we potentially have multiple clusters with different cluster configurations, and we just need to be explicit that you need to figure out what you're doing for this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, one like just general comment / thought is that at the level of maturity that these things are coming to these days, I feel like there's a lot of kind of like integration guide energy in the KEP, which is cool. I wonder if there's a world where we need to like lift that stuff into the website or whatever.
Yes, definitely
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
It's a question of like who and when do we do that? But yeah, like the website is severely underinvested, let's say.
Yeah, and I'm
And a
very
lot of this, yeah, would be more appropriate to just have in docs rather than go through the updated KEP process.
Yeah, but I am very happy, I would say at least, to be doing this via the KEP process right now, because I do think there's a habitual information, you know, gathering way that implementers go for stuff, which is by KEP, and it gives us a very like specific process to do that. But yeah, I just wanted to like generally bring that up, that I think like even some of this conversation sometimes gets a little bit in the like, should this be in the KEP or not? But I think I'm of the opinion that for at least now and until we have something better, and maybe even in the future, regardless, we need it here and somewhere else. That's what I wanted to say. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I think we're close on this though. So
All right, thanks for the
appreciate
Yeah.
the patience with me taking forever to get feedback on this.
No, thanks for digging into the latest on dual stack as well. So we can, our goal is to align for sure. All right, Keith at Mike M.
Keith, you're still around. You can take the lead on this. Oh, looks like he might have dropped off.
I think we
He was
lost
here earlier. Anyway, so I guess I'll handle this then. There's a new working group proposal out for working group AI Gateway. So the intent here is moving more broadly than kind of like what had started as like a subgroup of, or I guess a sub project of Gateway API under working group serving, was kind of like the inference, Gateway API inference extension project. And basically there's a broader need to think about some of this like newer AI gateway use cases and what that's going to look like. So we've had some ad hoc discussions with some of the gateway API maintainers about like how do we want to do the inference extension in multi-cluster deployments, and kind of what are some of those problems. So this is basically just an invitation of, would SIG-MC be interested in becoming one of the stakeholders for this new working group potentially? And don't expect an answer now, but just kind of wanted to open this discussion and invite folks to read through this issue, some of the docs and scope, and figure out if it might make sense to participate.
Okay, yeah, cool. I think we talked about this a little bit. Was that last time?
Yes. Shane
yeah,
came here to, I
came
think,
and
present.
presented
Yep.
about this. Yep. And I guess I don't know what. I think we have some things to say. I think we have a perspective to share, and I think that we have a emphasis on multi-cluster that, for example, even like yeah, that like, you know, the gateway API hasn't historically like benefited from, sometimes more, sometimes less over time, like from the SIG network perspective. So I think that's true. And then I guess this question is about like, what does that mean logistically in terms of like being representative on the working group, or I guess like being like, I guess, like, I think that this, whoever it is or whatever, the fact that someone of our group is representing there, we would have some obligations and power to like approve or whatever, like any things that come out of the working group. Is
Yeah,
what
I
we're
think we definitely
talking
care.
about.
It's what is the
Level
formal
of
impact?
care. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yep.
Ryan has a hand also, so go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I pretty much have the same question. Like, what does that mean to be a sponsor of this or stake in this? What does that exactly mean? I'm new to this. I don't know what does that mean.
Maybe that's a question we need to figure out. This sounds like something we should probably bring back to Shane and ask, like, what are the expectations you have for stakeholders? Like, if it that a SIG-MC lead will attend these meetings or will
Right.
offer ad hoc feedback on proposals, like kind of understand the expectations to be listed here. That sounds like a good question to get answered.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, yeah, I think it's also relevant. They talked a little bit last week too, but it felt like it was kind of in flight about like, I think that directly intersects with what are the expectations of being like on this list, and then what are the expectations of the entire working group, which is like what's in scope and what is the like closing criteria of the working group, which was kind of discussed briefly last time, but it was still a little vague. And it may not get super, you know, super defined, I think, based on like the type of problem that they're trying to handle, which is very brainstormy. But yeah, just want to bring that up, that those are two halves of the same coin. What does it mean to have our name on it, and what does it mean for this working group to be done?
Oh, sorry. The definition of done for like the closing out the working group, that was the second question.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right, cool. Got it.
Yeah. And some of that is in here, and some of that was brought up last time too.
Yes, last time I think I asked the same question. Shane
Yeah.
says basically this working group is to have a proposal, so it's not going to have like final implementation or even API. I think.
Yep. Okay.
Cool. Sounds like we got two questions then, and
Yeah.
we can get answers to this.
Mike, are you like
yep.
liaising this right now? Are you?
I can be a liaison there. Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Got it. Okay. That's the end of the agenda, Jeremy.
And maybe I have one last thing, like,
Yeah,
because you made a PR to add a glossary, Laura, and I don't know if you saw my comments.
Yeah. I did just before this, but
okay.
let's talk about it right now. Okay, so to give some context to everybody, remember talking about hub cluster? There's a position statement. There's a PR to open a position statement to describe what a hub cluster is, but there's been various like things about the content of that, and then most recently it has devolved more into a conversation about what exactly that word is, because there's prior art related to that, and it was super beneficial to also, and I think even part of the goal of adding in the APAC friendly time was to make sure that we could get some more insight from related projects that weren't able to fully participate in this discussion before then. So the latest version of conversation was about what this terminology was, came up from socializing this some more. And then there had been some surveys that went out too about like trying to figure out like what a name change would mean for other implementations, or how that would confuse people or not. And then we eventually got to a point of talking about how maybe we should have a written record of like the other names that things go by, as a place that, instead of this just being tribal knowledge in our heads, and that was seen as like a valuable compromise in the context of this PR. So to try and achieve that, I opened some PRs on both the Multicluster website and in this Kubernetes / community repo, and they serve two different purposes. And we can kind of, I think they go together, but we can talk about them a little bit differently. I want to bring up first the terminology page, which is what was explicitly asked for in the context of the comment thread that I just showed you, which is very simple. It's like, this thing is called this and was previously known as this, or also known as this, or whatever. But then there's also a potentially more controversial website glossary that I added that would be on the SIG's multicluster.sig.case.io.com, whatever place website, that has like a one line in here, so that it's like a one line view of glossary. So obviously there's some editorializing of what I think is the most important thing to define something in only like 10 words, you know. But then this would be the jumping point if you got from this glossary to then need to go get more details and more context, and trying to keep this as thin as possible. So that's like the overall vision. And then meanwhile, there is some conversation, particularly on this glossary, about if these definitions are proper or not, which I think we can definitely talk about here too, Arthur, but that's the overall vision. Yeah, so I guess this is on one hand a heads up to people that this is an effort, and a heads up to that yeah, I think for your specific comment, Arthur, I was trying to be specific about the API part of it, and maybe this is too much or too confusing in the quick version. I would say overall, I think this glossary has to have like a really harsh editorial. Like, I think we need to, we can't get a lot of nuance across by definition. So I think we have to like link out to other things as much as possible if we're getting into situations where we feel like we could mislead strongly. That's my bias.
Well, in my opinion, at least, of not knowing too much about the API and the context or when it was created.
Right.
I mean, deprecating cluster property API while cluster property is a valid term would make it weird. I guess, well, to me, we should be like living with both terms indefinitely, probably, I guess. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. And that's fine. I don't feel like super strongly about this. This is kind of, I think in this case, this is confusing enough that we can basically like remove this part, or say like, I can be more specific about the kind, and that this is like, if you think like basically, if anyone in this community thinks that cluster property API is a colloquial name that is used for the About API today, then this needs to say another colloquial name for the About API based on the kind name. I just haven't observed people talk about it that way as much, but if you disagree, then 100% I'll change the line.
So. I think as a meta point, it's a little bit more confusing having old terminology at this top level versus having the current terms, and then where we have like previously known as, I think is useful.
Yeah, but even previously known as, like the CRD is still named cluster property. So like cluster property is valid, but when you add API to that, it's not old.
Well, I think even independently of this conversation, Mike is saying that any, like, we could say cluster property, a kind in, like, we could define cluster property in here, or not think that that needs to be top level. But I think what he's saying is any old name, like cluster inventory maybe is a better example. I think, Mike, you're saying that this shouldn't be in the glossary page. At best, maybe this is on a history page ? I don't know. I personally do feel that people get really confused about like past terminology, but if this is not the place for that, then that's okay.
To me, it should be in the glossary page, because you might be confused when you read about API and you know about cluster property kind, and you don't necessarily link those two together.
Maybe it's just like mentioning that the cluster property CRDs are like mention the CRD name in the definition of the about API.
Yeah, that would make sense too.
All right, I'll leave it as kind of an open question of, do old names belong on the glossary or just in terminology.md or in a different page? I'm very amenable to making the first PR as as skeleton as possible, just so the page is there and then we can add on. So in this specific case, how I will take this as a next step is remove those, and then we can like move on to the next stage of website. So that's my bias.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for bringing it up, Arthur. Anything else, team?
Good rest of the day, y'all.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for driving.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you all.